Martin Davis was a man who carried the weight of a great responsibility every single day. As the CEO of CHRONICLES Airlines, one of the fastest growing airlines in America, he was known for his calm leadership and smart decisions. Martin was a tall man with a kind face and eyes that always seemed to look beyond the obvious. He worked hard, not just for himself, but for every employee who depended on the company. For years, Martin had built CHRONICLES from a small local airline to a major player in the industry. His journey was not easy. He had faced many challenges, some bigger than others, and he overcame them with patience, strength, and fairness. Many respected him for the way he treated people equally, and his story had inspired thousands. On this bright Monday morning, Martin was ready for another busy day at the company's headquarters. The big glass building was full of energy and hope. Employees hurried to their desks, the phone lines buzzed with calls, and airplanes were being prepared for flights. Everything seemed perfect. But little did Martin know, something was about to change his world in a way he never expected. Across the city, in a fancy office on the other side of town, a woman named Karen Simmons sat at her desk. Karen was a sharp businesswoman. She had worked her way up in the airline industry, too, but unlike Martin, she was known for being very competitive and sometimes ruthless. She wanted the CEO seat at CHRONICLES Airlines, and she was ready to do whatever it took to get it. Karen had noticed Martin's success and knew that the company was about to announce a new board decision. If she could take over his position, it would be a big win for her career. She had been talking to some powerful people on the board, promising changes and new ideas. Some believed her because she spoke confidently and looked ready to lead. On this very day, the board of directors had a meeting planned to discuss the future of CHRONICLES. Martin believed it would be about new routes and better services. Karen, however, had a secret plan to convince the board that she was the better choice for CEO. Back at the headquarters, Martin was preparing for the meeting. He had just finished reviewing a new safety report when his assistant knocked on his office door. "Mr. Davis, the board meeting is ready to start," she said politely. Martin nodded and stood up, straightening his tie. "Thank you, Susan. I'll be there in a minute." As he walked toward the meeting room, Martin felt calm but focused. He knew his work was important. The airline's future was in his hands. When he entered the room, the atmosphere was a little different from usual. Some board members looked nervous, and Karen was sitting confidently at the head of the table. It was clear she was ready to speak. The chairman of the board, Mr. Thompson, began the meeting. "Today, we have an important decision to make about the leadership of CHRONICLES Airlines," he said slowly. Martin felt his heart beat faster. What was happening? Karen stood up and started talking. "Thank you, everyone. I believe that CHRONICLES needs new energy, new ideas. Our company is great, but we can do better. I am ready to lead CHRONICLES to even greater heights." She looked at Martin directly, and the room felt tense. Martin listened quietly, surprised but not shaken. Then, Karen revealed her plan. She said she had the support of several board members and suggested that Martin should step down as CEO. She promised that she would bring more profits and faster growth. Martin's mind raced. He had worked hard for this company. He had trusted these board members. But now, it felt like everything was changing in a moment. One of the board members spoke up. "Karen, these are strong words, but Martin has done an excellent job so far. Why should we change leadership now?" Karen smiled. "Because sometimes, we need to take risks to grow." The chairman looked at Martin. "Martin, we need to hear your thoughts." Martin took a deep breath. I respect everyone's opinion, but I want to remind the board that success is built on trust, safety, and respect for all employees. Changing leadership suddenly can harm the company's stability. Despite his calm words, Martin felt the room growing colder. The decision was already being made. After a few more minutes of discussion, the chairman announced, by majority vote, the board has decided to appoint Karen Simmons as the new CEO of CHRONICLES Airlines, effective immediately. The room went silent. Martin sat back, surprised but composed. Karen smiled and shook hands with some board members. She looked at Martin once more, with a mix of victory and challenge. Martin knew he had lost his seat, but he also knew he wasn't finished yet. As the meeting ended, Martin left the room quietly. Outside, the news spread fast through the company. Employees were shocked. Many supported Martin and worried about the future. Some whispered about what had really happened behind the scenes. Martin went to his office to pack his things. His heart was heavy, but he was not broken. Just before leaving, he looked out the window at the planes ready to fly. He thought about the passengers' safety, about the hard-working crew, and about the promise he had made when he first took this job. Then, with a quiet but firm voice, he made a decision. Martin Davis sat quietly in his office, watching the sunlight reflect off the airplanes parked on the runway. His heart was heavy, but his mind was sharp. Losing the CEO position was not something he expected, and it was hard to accept. But Martin had learned many times in life that when one door closes, another one opens. He wasn't going to give up. The news of Karen Simmons becoming the new CEO spread quickly. Some employees were excited, hoping for changes and new ideas. Others were worried. Martin had been more than a leader to them, he was a symbol of trust and fairness. Now, with Karen in charge, they didn't know what to expect. Martin knew he had to act carefully. He still cared deeply about the airline and the people who worked there. His first thought was about safety and the company's reputation. CHRONICLES Airlines was known for being reliable, and Martin did not want anything to harm that. Meanwhile, Karen was already busy making changes. She called meetings, sent emails, and talked about new strategies. She wanted to grow the company fast and make more money. But some of her ideas made employees nervous. She wanted to cut some costs, and some workers felt their jobs were at risk. One afternoon, Martin was sitting in a small coffee shop near the airport. He was talking with James, one of the senior pilots who had worked with him for many years. James was a calm man with gray hair and a kind smile. He respected Martin deeply and was worried about what would happen next. "Martin," James said quietly, "I don't like how Karen is rushing things. She's making big changes without asking us. The pilots, the crew, we feel unsure." Martin nodded. "I understand, James. That's why I'm thinking about what I can do next. CHRONICLES is more than a business. It's a family." James looked at Martin. "You still have friends on the board and in the company. Maybe you can find a way to help, even if you're not CEO." Martin smiled softly. "Maybe. But it will not be easy." Back at the company, Karen was preparing for her first big announcement. She planned to introduce a new route, flying to a popular city that could bring in many customers. She hoped this would show the board she was the right leader. But Martin was watching carefully. He had learned about the new route plan from some employees who trusted him. There were problems. The airplanes scheduled for the route had maintenance issues, and the crew was not ready. If Karen pushed this plan too fast, it could cause delays or worse. Martin knew he had to act quickly. He couldn't stop Karen directly, but he could warn the people responsible for safety. That evening, Martin made some calls. He talked to the chief engineer and the head of the flight operations team. They agreed with him the new route was risky to launch now. Together, they decided to prepare a report for the board, explaining the risks clearly. Martin hoped the board would listen and slow down the new plan. The next day, Karen held a press conference. She stood in front of reporters, smiling confidently. "CHRONICLES Airlines is ready to grow like never before," she said. "We will launch new routes and bring great experiences to our passengers." But as she spoke, a message arrived in her office from the flight operations team: the airplanes for the new route were not ready. The crew was not prepared. If the flight started as planned, it could lead to cancellations and unhappy customers. Karen felt the pressure. She didn't want to lose face in front of the board and the public. But she also knew safety could not be ignored. Meanwhile, Martin was talking to some board members in private. He explained the safety concerns and reminded them about the company's values. One board member, Miss Evans, spoke gently to Karen. "Karen, we respect your ideas. But we must be careful. Safety is our top priority." Karen sighed. She realized she needed to reconsider. That evening, the board called a special meeting. They discussed the safety report and Martin's advice. After a long talk, the chairman made an announcement. "Due to safety concerns, CHRONICLES Airlines will delay the launch of the new route until further notice," he said. Karen looked disappointed but nodded. Martin watched quietly, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. He knew the fight for the company was not over. But today, the airline's safety had won. As the meeting ended, Martin thought about the people who depended on CHRONICLES: the passengers, the pilots, the crew, and every employee. He felt a deep responsibility to protect them, no matter what. Later that night, Martin sat in his small apartment. He thought about his family, his dreams, and the future. He knew that even without the CEO seat, he could still make a difference. And so, with a strong heart and clear mind, Martin prepared for the next step, a step that would not only protect the airline but also teach everyone the true meaning of leadership. The days after the board's decision to delay the new route felt strange for Martin Davis. He was no longer the CEO, but the company's safety and future stayed on his mind every moment. He knew he had to stay connected with the people who still believed in him and with the airline itself. Martin spent time visiting the airport, quietly talking to the pilots, flight attendants, and ground staff. Many of them greeted him warmly. They remembered how he always listened to their concerns and treated everyone with respect. He was more than a leader, he was a friend. One afternoon, while Martin was talking to a group of flight attendants, a young woman named Lisa approached him. Lisa was new to the company but had already shown great promise. She looked worried. "Mr. Davis," she said softly, "there are rumors about more changes coming. Some say jobs might be cut, and safety rules might be ignored to save money." Martin frowned. "That's serious, Lisa. Safety must always come first. Have you heard anything specific?" Lisa nodded. "Some managers are pushing crews to work longer hours without rest. It's making people tired and worried." Martin's heart sank. He knew this was dangerous. Flying tired was one of the biggest risks in the airline business. That evening, Martin decided to act. He couldn't control the company anymore, but he could make sure the right people knew the truth. He called James, the senior pilot, and explained what Lisa had said. James agreed to bring the issue to the pilots' union. The next day, Martin met with the head of the flight operations team, Maria. She was a strong woman with years of experience. "Maria," Martin said, "I have heard reports that crews are being pushed too hard. Is this true?" Maria sighed. "Yes, Martin. There is pressure from the new management to cut costs. They want flights to run on tight schedules, but it's causing stress." Martin looked determined. "We cannot let safety be a victim of business decisions. What can we do?" Maria smiled. "We are working with the union to raise concerns. But we need support from the top." Martin nodded. "Even if I am not CEO, I will do everything I can to help." Meanwhile, Karen Simmons was busy running the company. She held meetings every day, pushing for faster growth and more profits. She believed that moving quickly was the way to win in business. But the pressure was building. Some employees were unhappy, and the pilots were growing restless. The airline's safety reputation was starting to show cracks. One morning, Martin received a call from Maria. "Martin, there's been an incident," she said quietly. "A flight was delayed because the pilot reported feeling too tired to fly safely." Martin's heart raced. This was exactly the problem he feared. "What happened next?" he asked. "The flight was cancelled," Maria said. "But the management is angry. They want to avoid cancellations and costs." Martin was silent for a moment. Then he spoke firmly. "This is a safety issue. It cannot be ignored." He decided to write a letter to the board of directors. In the letter, he explained the risks of pushing crews too hard and the dangers it could bring to passengers and the company's reputation. Martin asked the board to investigate and make sure the airline followed strict safety rules. He sent the letter and waited. A few days later, the board called an emergency meeting. They wanted to discuss Martin's letter and the growing concerns among employees. Karen was there, looking serious. The chairman spoke first. "We have received a report from Mr. Davis about safety risks. This is a serious matter." Karen nodded. "I understand. But we must balance safety with business needs." Martin stood and spoke calmly. "Safety is not just a rule. It is the foundation of this company. Without it, we risk everything: our passengers, our employees, and our future." The room was silent. The board members listened carefully. After long discussions, the chairman made a decision. "We will launch a full safety review immediately. No flights will be scheduled without proper rest for crews. We cannot take risks." Karen looked frustrated but agreed. Martin felt a small victory. It was not the position he once held, but it was a step toward protecting the airline and the people who depended on it. Outside the meeting room, Martin met with James and Maria. They smiled at each other, knowing they had done the right thing. But Martin also knew the fight was not over. Karen's leadership style was still a challenge, and the company needed a leader who valued people over profits. That night, Martin thought deeply about his next move. He wanted to help CHRONICLES Airlines become the best it could be: safe, fair, and strong. As he looked out at the stars, Martin made a silent promise to himself and to everyone who believed in him: no matter what happened, he would keep fighting for what was right. And with that promise, a new chapter of the story was about to begin. The days following the board's decision to launch a safety review were tense. Martin Davis stayed close to the employees, listening and learning. Even though he was no longer the CEO, people still looked up to him. His calm presence gave many a sense of hope and trust. Karen Simmons, on the other hand, was feeling the pressure. The new safety review slowed down many of her plans. The board was watching carefully, and some members were starting to question whether her fast approach was the best way to run CHRONICLES Airlines. One afternoon, Martin received an unexpected visitor. It was Rosa, a young flight attendant with a bright smile but worried eyes. "Mr. Davis," Rosa said, "thank you for everything you've done. But I need to tell you something. Some of us are scared. We don't know if Karen's leadership will keep us safe." Martin looked at Rosa kindly. "Thank you for trusting me, Rosa. Can you tell me more?" Rosa took a deep breath. "Some flights have been very busy. The crews are tired. We want to do our best, but we are afraid accidents could happen if things don't change." Martin nodded slowly. "I understand. Safety isn't just about rules, it's about how people feel and how they work together." Rosa smiled a little. "That's why you were so good, Mr. Davis. You cared about us." Martin felt a mix of sadness and determination. He missed leading the company, but he also knew that he still had a role to play. That evening, Martin met with James, the senior pilot, and Maria, the head of flight operations. They discussed the latest news from the safety review. "The reports show some risks," Maria said. "We have to act fast to fix these problems." James nodded. "We need to make sure all employees are heard. If people feel safe and supported, they will do their best." Martin agreed. "Let's prepare a clear plan. We must convince the board to put safety first, not just now, but always." Meanwhile, Karen was preparing for a big presentation. She wanted to prove to the board that she could grow the company without ignoring safety. She believed that speed and success were connected. But as Karen worked late into the night, she received a call from the head of maintenance. "Karen, we have a problem," he said seriously. "Some airplanes need more repairs than we expected. If we rush them, it could be dangerous." Karen frowned. She knew this could delay her plans. But she also knew the board was watching her closely. The next morning, Karen stood before the board to give her presentation. She spoke about growth, profits, and new opportunities. But when the chairman asked about safety, she hesitated. Martin watched from the back of the room. He could see the tension. After the presentation, the chairman spoke firmly. "Karen, growth is important, but safety cannot be compromised. The board expects you to follow the safety review's recommendations fully." Karen nodded, though her expression was tight. That afternoon, Martin met with Rosa again. She brought a group of employees who wanted to share their concerns directly. Martin listened carefully as pilots, flight attendants, and ground staff spoke honestly about their worries and hopes. After the meeting, Martin spoke to the group. "Your voices matter. Together, we can help CHRONICLES become a company where safety and care come first." The employees smiled and thanked him. Martin felt a strong sense of purpose. Later that week, the safety review team presented their full report to the board. The findings were clear: CHRONICLES needed to improve training, rest times for crews, and airplane maintenance. The board agreed to create a new safety committee, with members from different parts of the company, to oversee changes. Martin was invited to join the committee as an advisor. It was not the CEO role he once had, but it was an important chance to help. Karen also joined, though the atmosphere between her and Martin was still tense. At their first meeting, Martin spoke calmly but firmly. "Safety is the foundation of everything we do," he said. "We must work together, listen to employees, and make sure no decision puts anyone at risk. Karen nodded slowly. I want to learn and do better. It was a small step, but it showed that even in difficult times, people could find common ground. Outside the meeting room, Martin thought about the journey ahead. It would not be easy. Karen's style was different, and the company needed time to heal. But he believed that with honest work and respect, CHRONICLES could become stronger than ever. That night, as Martin walked home, he saw a group of children playing in the park. Their laughter reminded him why he worked so hard to build a future where everyone was safe, valued, and free to dream. Martin smiled to himself. The fight was far from over, but he was ready. The days passed, and the new safety committee began its work. Martin Davis and Karen Simmons sat on opposite sides of the long conference table. The air was tense, but both knew that the future of CHRONICLES Airlines depended on their cooperation. Martin spent his time listening to employees and studying the safety reports carefully. He wanted to understand every detail, every risk, and every concern. Martin knew that safety was more than just rules, it was about people's lives. Karen, on the other hand, was focused on numbers and deadlines. She believed that fast growth was the key to success, but the safety committee meetings made her realize that rushing could cause serious problems. One morning, Martin was in the break room when a young mechanic named Tommy approached him. Tommy was nervous but hopeful. "Mr. Davis," Tommy said, "I've found some problems with one of the planes scheduled for a long flight. The engine needs more work, but the schedule is tight." Martin nodded seriously. "Thank you for telling me, Tommy. Safety comes first. Let's get the maintenance team to look at it immediately." Tommy smiled, relieved. "I want to help keep everyone safe." Martin felt proud of Tommy and thought about how important it was to encourage honesty and care in the company. Later that day, Martin and Karen had a private conversation in the CEO's old office. The room was filled with memories of Martin's years leading CHRONICLES. "Karen," Martin began gently, "I know you want to grow the company. But you must remember, without safety, growth means nothing." Karen looked tired but thoughtful. "I'm learning, Martin. It's harder than I expected." Martin smiled. "Leadership isn't easy. But it's about listening to your people, earning their trust, and putting their well-being first." Karen nodded slowly. "I want to do better. I want CHRONICLES to be strong and safe." Their conversation was a small step toward understanding. Both knew the road ahead would be difficult, but cooperation was possible. Meanwhile, the safety committee worked on new policies. They created better schedules for pilots and flight attendants, giving them more rest. They improved training programs and made sure every plane received proper maintenance. The employees noticed the changes. Some felt hopeful again. The atmosphere at CHRONICLES slowly began to improve. One afternoon, Martin visited the flight crew lounge. He sat with a group of pilots and listened as they shared stories and concerns. Captain James spoke up. "Martin, the new policies are helping. The crews feel less pressure. That means safer flights." Martin smiled. "That's what I hope to hear." Just then, an urgent call came from the operations center. There was a problem with a flight scheduled to leave in an hour. The airplane had a mechanical issue. Martin stood quickly. "Let me go with you." At the airport, Martin and Maria rushed to the maintenance hangar. The mechanics were working hard to fix the problem. Maria explained, "If we push this flight out now, we risk something going wrong. It's better to delay." Martin agreed. "Safety first." He called Karen to inform her. Karen was upset about the delay but understood the reason. "Thanks for letting me know, Martin," she said. "I don't want any risks." The flight was delayed by 3 hours, but the passengers were safe, and the crew had time to prepare. News of the delay spread quickly. Some people were frustrated, but most appreciated the company's honesty and care. Martin felt relieved. This was a moment when safety won over profit. Back at the office, the board praised the safety committee's work. The chairman said, "CHRONICLES is showing that safety and growth can go hand in hand." Karen looked at Martin with new respect. "Thank you for your leadership during this time." Martin nodded. "We all want the same thing: a strong, safe company." That evening, Martin walked home thinking about the journey so far. Losing the CEO seat had been painful, but it had not stopped him from caring for CHRONICLES. He thought about the employees, the passengers, and the future. Martin smiled, knowing that leadership was not about power, but about responsibility and heart. And with that thought, he prepared for the challenges ahead, ready to stand for what was right. The safety committee's work was beginning to show real results at CHRONICLES Airlines. Flight crews were less tired, maintenance was thorough, and employees were starting to feel respected again. But Martin Davis knew the real test was yet to come. One morning, a call came into Martin's phone. It was Maria, the head of flight operations. "Martin, we have a serious situation," she said quietly. "One of our planes had to make an emergency landing last night. The pilot noticed a problem mid-flight, and the safety team acted quickly." Martin's heart raced. "Is everyone okay?" "Yes, thanks to the pilot's quick decision. But this could have been much worse if the plane hadn't been properly maintained." Martin nodded, even though Maria couldn't see him. "Thank you for letting me know. We need to find out what went wrong and fix it immediately." That afternoon, Martin went to the airport's hangar to meet with the maintenance crew. They showed him the plane's engine, explaining the issue. "The part was wearing down faster than expected," said Tommy, the young mechanic who had spoken to Martin before. "If we hadn't caught it, the engine could have failed during flight." Martin looked at Tommy with respect. "You did the right thing by telling us early. That saved lives." Tommy smiled proudly. "I just want to keep everyone safe." The maintenance team worked overtime to repair the plane and check other aircraft for similar problems. Martin stayed with them, learning and listening. Meanwhile, Karen Simmons was preparing for a public press conference. The emergency landing was big news, and the company needed to show it was handling the situation responsibly. Martin and Karen met to plan their message. "We must be honest," Martin said. "People trust us because we tell the truth and show we care." Karen nodded. "Agreed. I want to emphasize the safety improvements we've made and promise we will keep working hard." At the press conference, Karen spoke first, outlining the facts and the company's commitment to safety. Then Martin stepped forward. "Safety is not just a priority, it's our promise. We owe it to our passengers, our employees, and their families. Every decision we make must protect them." Reporters asked tough questions, but Martin answered calmly and clearly. His honesty and care won respect from many. After the conference, Martin felt a quiet satisfaction. The crisis had been handled well, but there was more work to do. Back at the office, Martin called a meeting of the safety committee. Everyone gathered around the table: pilots, mechanics, flight attendants, and managers. "This incident reminds us that safety can never be taken for granted," Martin said. We must continue to listen, learn, and act. No shortcuts, no excuses. Maria spoke next. We are updating maintenance schedules and training programs. We will make sure everyone knows how to report concerns without fear. James, the senior pilot, added, pilots and crews will have better rest times and support. Safety depends on how well we work together. Martin looked around the room, feeling hope. The team was strong and determined. Days later, Martin visited the flight crew lounge again. He met Rosa and some new employees. They talked about their experiences and hopes for the future. Rosa smiled. Things are changing, Mr. Davis. We feel safer and more respected. Martin nodded. That's because you are part of this change. Together, we are making Scirich better. But not everyone was happy. Some members of the board still questioned whether the company should focus more on profits than on safety. One afternoon, Martin received a call from Chairman Thompson. Martin, the board wants to meet with you, the chairman said. They want to discuss the company's direction and leadership. Martin felt a knot in his stomach but agreed to come. In the boardroom, Martin faced the members. Karen was also there, sitting quietly. The chairman began, Martin, your work with the safety committee has been important. But some board members feel the company needs stronger leadership to grow faster. Martin looked calmly at the group. Growth is important, but without safety, growth is meaningless. We cannot risk lives for profits. Karen added, I've learned from Martin. We can grow and be safe if we work together and respect the people who make this company run. The room was silent. Finally, the chairman said, we need a clear plan that balances growth and safety. Martin, we want you to lead that plan. Martin nodded slowly. I am ready. But it will take teamwork, honesty, and care. The board agreed to give Martin more responsibility again. Not yet CEO, but close. As Martin left the meeting, he felt a mix of relief and determination. The fight wasn't over, but the future was clearer. That evening, Martin stood outside the airport, watching planes take off into the sky. He thought about the people who trusted him and the responsibility he carried. Martin smiled softly. This is just the beginning. 6 months had passed since Martin Davis lost his seat as CEO of Scirich Airlines. What began as a shocking boardroom shake-up had slowly turned into a story of healing, change, and unexpected unity. The company was in a better place now. The safety committee had improved flight schedules, maintenance standards, and staff well-being. The crews felt heard. The passengers felt safe. The board felt proud. And through it all, Martin stayed right where he was needed, not in the big leather chair of the CEO's office, but among the people, where he had always belonged. One sunny morning, the Scirich board gathered again. This time, the mood was different. There were no secret plans, no hidden votes. Instead, the board members looked thoughtful, even hopeful. Chairman Thompson stood up at the head of the table. We are here today to talk about the future of Scirich Airlines. Over the past 6 months, we've seen strong improvements in both safety and employee trust. And there's one name that keeps coming up in every report, every hallway, and every staff conversation: Martin Davis. The room went quiet. Karen Simmons sat across from the chairman. Her face showed no anger. She had learned a lot in the last half year about people, leadership, and herself. I agree, Karen said, standing up. When I became CEO, I wanted fast success. But Martin reminded me that real leadership is about care, patience, and listening. I've made mistakes, but I've also learned. And I believe the best person to guide CHRONICLES forward is not me, it's Martin. Gasps filled the room. Martin, who had just arrived for a committee meeting, was surprised to see everyone looking at him. I wasn't expecting this, he said, walking slowly to the table. I only did what I thought was right for the company, the staff, and the passengers. Chairman Thompson smiled. That's exactly why we're offering you your position back, Martin. We want you to return as the CEO of CHRONICLES Airlines. For a moment, Martin said nothing. The room waited. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but full of emotion. I didn't fight for the title. I fought for the people. If I return, I want to continue the work we started together. This company only succeeds when we listen, respect, and protect each other. The board members nodded. Karen stepped forward and offered her hand. I made mistakes, Martin. But I want to thank you for showing me a better way. If you're willing, I'd like to continue working under your leadership. Martin shook her hand. We all grow when we're willing to learn. Thank you, Karen. With that, the board voted again, this time with open hearts. The result was unanimous. Martin Davis was once again CEO of CHRONICLES Airlines. But he didn't celebrate with champagne or loud speeches. Instead, he visited the airport, where the real work happened. He met the ground crew, hugged flight attendants, and shook hands with pilots. He walked into the break rooms, not to give orders, but to thank the people who had kept the airline flying during hard times. Later that evening, CHRONICLES employees gathered in the main hangar. Martin stood in front of them, dressed simply in a shirt and jacket, holding a microphone. I want to say thank you, he began. Not just for trusting me again, but for standing strong when things were unclear. This company belongs to all of us. No one person makes it great, it's all of you. There was loud applause. Some employees even wiped away tears. Martin looked over at Karen, who stood in the back. He nodded to her with respect. She smiled in return. In the following weeks, Martin and Karen worked together to build a stronger leadership team. They brought in new ideas from employees, improved communication, and focused on long-term safety and success. Martin didn't change his style. He still walked the hallways, stopped by the lunchroom, and asked people how they were doing. To him, leadership was never about sitting in a high chair, it was about showing up, caring, and doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. One morning, a little girl and her mother walked up to him at the airport. Are you Mr. Martin Davis? The mother asked. Yes, ma'am, Martin replied kindly. My daughter wants to be a pilot. She's been reading about you. She says you're her hero. Martin kneeled down, smiling at the girl. You can be anything you dream, sweetheart. And when you fly one of our planes one day, just remember, always lead with your heart. As the girl beamed with joy, Martin stood up, feeling more thankful than ever. He had lost his seat once, but he never lost his purpose. And now, with the company back in safe hands, he looked toward the sky, proud, humbled, and ready for the journey ahead.